It was a scene that stunned the world. The sun rose gently over Windsor Castle, its ancient walls glowing gold, when suddenly the palace gates opened. Out stepped Prince William and Princess Kate, hand in hand, faces calm yet filled with something unspoken. Cameras clicked, whispers filled the air, and millions asked the same question. What really happened inside those walls? This wasn't a royal event or a public ceremony. It was something deeper, an emotional moment that revealed the human heart behind the crown, a quiet decision that could reshape the future of the British monarchy. Before we step inside those palace walls and uncover the truth behind this emotional royal moment, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and share this story with other royal watchers who believe the crown hides more than glitter. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt royal stories, the ones that show not just the royalty, but the real people behind the titles. It was a morning that began like any other at Windsor Castle, the home where history breathes through stone and silence. The early sun slipped across the castle's towers, painting them gold as it had for centuries. Birds circled above the round tower, and the Thames below carried the reflection of that grand old fortress, serene and eternal. But inside, something felt different. The air was quieter, the footsteps lighter. At around 8 that morning, the castle gate stirred, not for a state visit, not for a royal ceremony, but for something far more personal. Guards stood in formation, their eyes fixed on the cobblestone path as two familiar figures appeared. Prince William and Princess Kate. They weren't dressed for public display. No ceremonial uniforms, no glittering jewels, just simplicity. William in a dark navy coat, Kate in soft beige, her hair swept back in the morning wind. To anyone watching, it might have looked like a casual stroll. But for those who knew, this was no ordinary walk. Windsor Castle had witnessed coronations, funerals, and farewells. But that morning it was witnessing something far rarer, a moment of human honesty inside a life bound by duty. The couple paused briefly near the old iron gates. A few photographers, camped outside since dawn, began snapping furiously. William placed a hand on Kate's back, guiding her gently forward, the kind of small, silent gesture that spoke louder than any royal announcement. What had happened inside those walls? For weeks, whispers had filled royal corridors. Insiders spoke of a private conversation late the night before, a meeting not with advisors or courtiers, but just the two of them. A long talk about the future, their family, and what it truly meant to live under the crown's shadow.
Since the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, Windsor had been both a home and a reminder, a place where the weight of legacy pressed on every heartbeat. For William, the castle wasn't only stone and history, it was memory. Every room held echoes of his grandmother's laughter, her quiet advice, her unwavering sense of duty. And perhaps that morning, he felt her presence most, reminding him that even monarchs are human. First, Kate, ever graceful, looked up at the castle as they walked. To the outside world, she was a picture of composure. But close observers noticed something else, the faint emotion in her eyes, the deep breath she took before they stepped into the light. She had always been the heart of calm amid the storm, the one who made royal life feel almost ordinary. But today, even she carried a quiet sadness. The castle gates opened with a slow, echoing groan, as if the very structure knew it was watching history take another gentle turn. The couple stepped out, side by side, hand in hand. The moment was brief, but it rippled across the world within minutes. Social media lit up with questions. Why were they leaving so suddenly? Was something wrong? Was this a farewell or beginning? But behind the speculations lay something deeper, something the cameras couldn't capture. This was not a dramatic exit. It was an intimate choice. That morning symbolized a pause, a breath in the life of two people who had spent years living beneath the weight of royal expectation. They weren't walking away from the monarchy. They were walking toward balance, toward peace. Inside, the corridors they left behind stood still. Staff members lowered their heads respectfully. Even the grand portraits of kings, queens, and soldiers seemed to watch quietly as the next chapter of royal history began with something as simple and as powerful as love. As William and Kate reached their car, the wind picked up slightly, carrying a faint chill. William turned once more to glance back at Windsor Castle, that vast symbol of tradition, power, and memory. For a moment, his expression softened, almost wistful. Perhaps he was thinking of the generations before him. Perhaps he was thinking of his children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, and what kind of world they would inherit. Then, with one last look, he nodded gently, as if saying goodbye not to the place, but to a chapter of his life. Kate's hand slipped into his, and together they stepped into the car. The gates of Windsor closed softly behind them. It was a moment few would understand completely, but those who did would never forget it. Because sometimes history doesn't shout. It whispers, and that morning, Windsor Castle whispered a story of love, courage, and quiet transformation. Behind every royal smile lies a story few ever hear. And for Prince William and Princess Kate, that story was written not in gold and glory, but in quiet sacrifice. The world often sees them as a perfect royal couple, graceful, composed, and unshakable. But what people don't see are the long nights, the whispered worries, and the moments of exhaustion that come when your every move is watched, judged, and remembered. After all, they were never just William and Kate. They were symbols of stability, of hope, of continuity after loss. Since the day they became the Prince and Princess of Wales, the crown rested on their shoulders in more ways than one. But even symbols need to breathe. Inside Windsor Castle, behind those towering walls, they had faced quiet trials, moments when the weight of royal life pressed too heavily on the heart. The public never saw the quiet discussions that stretched into the night, the handwritten notes of encouragement left on the kitchen counter, or the looks exchanged across a room when words weren't needed. William, raised within the structure of the monarchy, carried his duty like armor. From childhood, he had seen what the crown could give and what it could take away. He remembered the flashbulbs, the frenzy, the day his mother's smile disappeared from the world. Those memories never left him. Kate knew this. She had learned early that love in a royal life isn't just affection, it's endurance. She became his calm when the storm of royal pressure grew too strong. To the world, she was a duchess, polished and serene. To him, she was a steady heartbeat of a home that rarely slept. And that's what made Windsor special. It wasn't the size of the castle or its history. It was that inside those vast rooms, they built something simple, a family. Their children's laughter filled the old corridors that had once echoed with formality. George, Charlotte, and Louis turned royal history into hide-and-seek. The castle, once a fortress of kings, had become a sanctuary of bedtime stories and family dinners. But as the months passed, the world outside grew louder. Every gesture was analyzed, every glance magnified. The press spoke of royal duties, public expectations, future roles. Yet the couple longed for something more human, a life where their children could grow with open hearts, not just polished titles. And so, when they decided to leave Windsor that morning, it wasn't rebellion. It was reflection. They weren't turning away from duty. They were redefining it. For William, being the future king wasn't just about leading a nation. It was about protecting his family spirit, ensuring his children didn't lose their sense of normalcy to the raw tradition. Kate supported him completely. She knew what that kind of life could take. Her strength was quiet but unbreakable, the kind that doesn't need headlines to be felt. She was a whisper in his ear reminding him that kings can be kind and queens can be human. There had been emotional days before that walk. Conversations about balance, about the memory of the late queen, and how her legacy should be carried not by repetition, but by renewal. The queen had often said that the crown must change to endure. And now, William and Kate were living proof of that truth. As the couple looked out from their window that morning, they didn't see a castle. They saw a choice. A chance to raise their children in laughter, not in ceremony. A chance to be remembered not just as monarchs, but as parents who loved deeply, who dared to make the monarchy feel human again. When they finally stepped outside those walls, they carried with them not the weight of expectation, but the weight of love. Heavy, yes, but chosen. Because sometimes the strongest people are not those who hold the crown high, but those who remember why it must rest on a human heart. The world saw a smile, but behind that smile lived the courage to change history quietly. The car carrying Prince William and Princess Kate moved slowly down the long road away from Windsor Castle, its ancient towers fading in the rearview mirror. Inside, The silence was peaceful, not heavy, but full of understanding. For the first time in months, there were no formal schedules, no waiting cameras, no endless discussions about appearances or duties. Just two people, husband and wife, parents, partners, sharing a quiet breath as a castle disappeared behind them. William turned to Kate with that familiar, gentle smile. "We'll come back," he said softly. "But maybe next time, just for the children to play." Kate nodded, her eyes glistening. That's how it should be. Their decision wasn't about leaving the monarchy. It was about reminding the world that royalty isn't only a crown, it's also compassion, humanity, and the courage to protect what truly matters. In a world that demands perfection, they had chosen presence. The truth was, their walk from Windsor wasn't a grand exit. It was a quiet evolution. They weren't stepping down. They were stepping forward, into a life where love could breathe more freely, where duty and humanity could coexist without crushing one another. For William, every step was a promise to his late grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. He remembered her words about leadership being not in power, but in patience, not in speaking louder, but in listening longer. And he carried that wisdom into his own vision for the future. He didn't want a throne built on distance. He wanted a monarchy built on connection, one where people didn't just look up to their royals, but felt close to them. Kate understood that perfectly. She had always known that her greatest duty was not to the cameras, but to the children she kissed goodnight and the people who saw hope in her kindness. Their love wasn't showy. It was steady, the kind of love that keeps a palace warm even in silence. And perhaps that's what Windsor Castle felt that morning. Not loss, but renewal. The ancient walls, which had witnessed centuries of kings and queens bound by tradition, now watched a new kind of legacy take root. One built on empathy. One shaped by the gentle strength of a woman who married into a world of diamonds and chose instead to shine with grace. One guided by a man who grew up in grief and turned it into gentleness, who carried his mother's lessons and his grandmother's wisdom into the kind of leadership Britain hadn't seen before. As the car disappeared into the morning mist, Windsor stood silent once more. But for those who looked closely, the moment felt alive, like history was taking a softer breath. That day, something changed forever. Not in ceremony or headlines, but in spirit. The future king and queen had reminded the world that love is not weakness, it is a crown's truest strength. Because in the end, legacy is not about titles. It's about hearts touched, lives inspired, and courage quietly shown when no one is watching. And perhaps that is what really happened inside those palace walls. Not a farewell, but a new beginning. A royal love story, choosing peace over pressure, family over fame, and heart over history. And that is a story behind the quiet warp that captured the world. When Prince William and Princess Kate stepped out from Windsor Castle, they weren't walking away from their royal destiny. They were walking toward a more human one. It's a reminder that even in the grandest palaces, hearts beat just like ours, full of fear, hope, love, and the dream of something real. If this story touched you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe for more true royal stories told from the heart, and share it with someone who believes that even behind the crown, there's always a story worth feeling. Because sometimes the most powerful moments in history begin with a single quiet step. Crown,